I welcome all the participants who have participated from the various states of our country and also from the abroad. Today we have very distinguished faculty, a renowned pathologist, Professor Dr. N.K. Sood sir, who is Professor and Head, Department of Veterinary Pathology at Rampura Phul campus, Guru Angad Dev Veterinary and Animal Sciences University, Ludhiana, Punjab. The respected sir has a vast experience over 33 years in clinical pathology and oncology, and he has guided more than 11 postgraduate students and 3 PhD students. Professor Sood has the extensive research work done covering major fields of veterinary medicine with specialty for diagnostic pathology and animal cancer. Professor Sood has published more than 600 articles, and out of which more than 250 are the peer-reviewed articles. Professor Sood have received the ICR's Best Teacher Award in 2017, and also sir has received more than 70 prestigious national as well as international awards, recognitions, honors, and he has the lot of dedication to his work as a renowned pathologist. And even after the superannuation, he has joined the services again as a professor and head Department of Veterinary Pathology, and giving his services as a pathologist. I welcome Professor Dr. Sood sir to this third day of our training, and I also welcome our respected Officer D, Professor Dr. A.U. Bhikane sir, to this third day of training program. Now, I request our today's speaker, Professor Dr. N.K. Sood sir, to start his presentation. Dr. Professor Sood sir, please.
Thank you, Dr. Kishore, for organizing this, coordinating this effort. I am also thankful to all the organizers of the Maharashtra Fisheries and Animal Sciences and Fisheries University, as well as those involved from the postgraduate Veterinary and Animal Sciences University PG Postgraduate Institute campus, Akola. I'm also, of course, thankful to the Alembic group who have sponsored this, and particularly I should be thankful to Dr. Kurkure and Dr. Bhikane who have made this possible. And with this, I start sharing my screen now. It may take some time, sir. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can you hear me properly?
Yes, sir, yes.
Good, good, that's fine. Okay. Can you see the presentation?
Yes, sir, yeah.
Right. So I'm making full screen. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, sir. It is visible, sir. Yes.
Okay, nice, nice, nice. So, dear friends, I'm going to talk about gross lesions of some of the common bovine diseases I put the term conditions because all are not very specific diseases. There are some important conditions which can be seen in several diseases, and we have to cover that too. In fact, it is a plethora of lesions which can be there. Probably there may be many days required for covering all the aspects of all the systems, which is a long, long ago. So I'm trying to briefly put up some of the important lesions in Indian context. So the first slide I'm going to show you says that if you tell me something, if you say something, I'm going to forget it. If you try to show me something, I'm going to remember. And if you show me and involve me, I will understand. So that's the aim of showing all these gross lesions to all of you. So the first thing, before I start, I want to say some generalizations. See, when you try to look at the gross lesions, you have to look at the normal anatomy and gross appearance. You should be well versed with these things only, then you can say what is abnormal. If you don't know the normal, you cannot know the abnormal. And most of the lesions that you see, they may not be specific, they may not be pathognomonic, I told you. So just a few lesions reach that height of pathognomonic, and I'm going to show you some of them too. There are numerous lesions when considered with the complete history, number of animals affected, environment, duration, sex, age, time of onset, clinical signs, clinical findings, then you can certainly close down your choices and you can come to a presumptive diagnosis and probably some more test selection to confirm the disease. And always, when you talk about lesions, most of the lesions in animals and human systems, they would occur in the open systems, and out of that, probably GIT is one of the most open system. It is a two-way open system. And we have a respiratory system, which is also open system. And we have skin and appendages, which is a totally open system. We have also the urinogenital system, which is one-way open system. So these open systems have most of the diseases. The focus should be there. And most of the times, focus in the large animals is on the, the respiratory and the GIT diseases. So I would say number one, GIT, and number two, respiratory diseases. So my intention would be also to show you more of those which are more important. So I told you this thing already. There can be changes in the location of a organ. There can be changes in the shape of an organ. There can be changes in the size or weight of the organ. There can be changes in the color of the tissue of the organ. There can be changes in the odor, which can be also important many a times, particularly when you talk about, let us say, urine or feces. Consistency also matters, texture also matters, so that also contributes to the lesion. Then how much distribution of that particular lesion is, what is the percent involvement, that's also very important. Sorry for the spellings here. There has been a study in Switzerland where 2000 ruminants carcasses they were examined, and it was found that clinical and pathological diagnoses were available in a large number of animals, and they were correlated. And again, most of the lesions, they were of the digestive and the respiratory system. That's what I already said. So when you talk about the morphological descriptions and interpretation of lesions, First thing would be distribution. Whether if there are bilateral organs, then you have to see whether the lesion is unilateral or bilateral. For example, kidneys, adrenals, lungs, focal or multifocal, whether the lesion is just a single one, or there are two, or there are multiple, or they are all over distributed. So there can be focal, multifocal, diffuse lesions. They can also be locally extensive. It can be a very small localized lesion, or it can be extensive locally there. Sometimes they can be generalized lesions which are present throughout the body. The time of onset is also very important, and here whether the lesions have developed over hours or it has taken some days to a week or so, and then further on whether more than a week or 15 days, and then, or sometimes it has both the components, acute and chronic. We call it as chronic active. Severity. There can also be minimal severe, it can be moderately severe, it can be markedly severe, or it can vary from slight to severe. So all those terms have been used. Similarly, based upon the etiology, it can be verminous, it can be parasite induced, it can be bacteria induced, it can be virus induced, it can be fungal induced, it can be chemical induced, it can be due to trauma, it can be due to some other parasites, protozoal parasites, it can be due to toxic factors, so on, so forth. And based upon the exudate, what kind of exudate is there, again you apply certain terminologies: crupus, hemorrhagic, purulent, fibrinopurulent, fibrinous, all that, serous, and all those things. So this is just to show you the overall postmortem picture. When you do a necropsy on a bovine, this is bovine calf, it's easy to do a necropsy on a bovine calf. So you are exposing the thorax, there is a diaphragm, and then there is a liver, there are small intestines, there is hip joint, there is abomasum. Abomasum is more colored than rest of the four stomachs. I'm going to show you that. And it's always easy to do a necropsy on a calf rather than on a big size animal which is several quintals in weight. And this necropsy is really challenging. I told you the GIT is one of the most important system which is to be examined, and it's really challenging to examine this in a big cow of several quintals. This is a very large and heavy system in the body and occupies a lot of space in the body. So in healthy cattle, the four stomachs alone, they occupy more than half of the abdominal cavity. The rumen has a capacity, when you open the abdomen, and if there is a tympany, you must have seen that rumen is so big. So when you open any cavity, whatever you see as prominent, you should focus on that rather than changing the topography and cutting suddenly all the organs. You have to focus on whatever is obvious or whatever is predominant. And see, abomasum also volume is quite enough. Intestines, although they are pretty long, they are about 33 to 63 meter long. They are much longer than the monogastric animals in ruminants. But still they occupy much lesser space. Supposing they are very prominent, then you can suspect some enteritis or gas filled intestines or some obstruction or something. So certainly the GIT examination is very demanding. This is an abdominal viscera which has been opened up, and you can see When you open the abdomen, you will find the four stomachs occupying most of the abdomen, and this is the rumen. And this is abomasum. Abomasum is always little colored, is little reddish or darkly colored as compared to rest of the four stomachs. That's how you can differentiate. If you look at certain key points in relation to the gastrointestinal tract, I have already told you that clinical, historical data, history, clinical science, clinical examination, other tests, all that has to be incorporated. The red bubble that we usually see, that doesn't mean that this is hemorrhage. It is mostly congestion, remember that. And whenever there is a enteritis, there is edema, there is fibrin, there is feed material which is adherent to the mucosa. And there may be mucosal erosion or ulcers, there can be necrosis, there can be a lot of hemorrhage, there can be exudate, etc. And there can also be a bad odor. When there is enteritis, it's a filthy odor too. So now with that background, let me start with the digestive system. That is the most important system. So one of the commonest lesions that you see is actinomycosis. It is caused by Actinomyces bovis, which is a gram-positive organism, affects the heart tissues, bony tissues, and it is also known as lumpy jaw condition. And there can be various presentations, and when you cut it, you will find pyogranulomatous inflammation. And remember, the granules of actinomycosis are sulfur-like, and they are about 1 millimeter in size, which can be seen grossly with the naked eye. Whereas those of actinobacillosis, they are smaller. This is actinobacillosis, which is also known as wooden tongue, and this affects the soft tissues, affects usually the tongue or the lymph nodes, and you can see multifocal lesions there. It's not just one focus. And there may be some foci which are coalescing or which are joining together to form a larger focus. This is a periodontal disease which is caused by fluorosis. Can you see the discoloration of the teeth and the gum in this disease? Interestingly, this spoils the enamel. Remember, fluoride is very important for formation or for hardening of the enamel. Is the hardest substance in the body, and this is top lining the teeth, and it's shiny, and this is spoiled by excess of fluoride content. In some of the states the water content has, or some of the places there is a fluorosis, and that spoils the enamel. So enamel is important for the growth of enamel, as well as the fluoride is excess can cause lesions in the enamel or can degrade the enamel. This is a Fusobacterium necrophorum, or the calf diphtheria, which can occur anywhere between the upper digestive or the respiratory tract. This is in the laryngeal region, pharyngeal-laryngeal region, and there is a necrotic patch there. There can be bloat, which is a very common finding, tympani or bloat, and here at the thoracic inlet, you see there will be a sudden change in the color. So here there's a blanched appearance, here there's a reddish congestion, and this is all because of the increase in the intra-abdominal pressure and vascular flow changes. This is Gongylonema infestation in the esophagus. See that coiled appearance of the parasite. I'm going one by one from top to bottom in the GIT. So this is a rumen epithelium. If you remember, after a few hours of postmortem, the ruminal epithelium just sloughs off automatically. If it does not slough, that means there can be ruminitis. For example, here it is not sloughing and it's remaining stuck. So that means that in the live animal there was ruminitis. That's why it is not sloughing. And can you see there's a congestion there? There may be some necrosis part there. And this is necrobacillosis of the rumen. You can see those white necrotic areas surrounded by a zone of congestion which is blackish or reddish. And now remember, once there is a ruminal acidosis which can cause proliferation of several organisms, particularly the fungi, then there can be flare up of fungal infections, particularly the phycomycetes and the aspergilli. And here you can see this is a superficial mycosis. This is candida. It's a very specific appearance of candida. Whereas once you have the deep mycosis or aspergilli or zygomycete infection, zygomycete means Absidia, mucor, etc., or rhizopus, and aspergillus most commonly is Aspergillus fumigatus, rarely flavus. So here you can see this lesion is much deeper and it's spreading towards the periphery. Here there are ruminal flukes which are attached to the rumen surface, and can you see those ruminal papillae, and can you see those, and this is a magnified view. In fact, you can't see with the naked eye that clearly. So this is presumably par amphistomum. It also causes pimply gut. And here you can see the rumen papilloma. See, papilloma viruses, there are multiple viruses. Some of them, they cause papillomas in the skin, and others they may cause in the digestive tract, including the oral cavity of dogs. You see oral papillomatosis, and in bovine sometimes this rumen, there are so many viruses. There are 100 to 200 papilloma viruses, and there are different types of viruses which cause the, for example, bovine papilloma virus 6 that will cause in the rumen. And this is a traumatic reticulitis. Reticular network is such that the sharp needles will get lodged there. They will not move further. And slowly they will penetrate the wall, and then they will go out into the peritoneum. Finally, they will penetrate the diaphragm, go into the heart, pericardium, or they may go into the lungs too. And thus, this is a very important disease which is seen in industrialized areas or near the vicinity of the cities. And this is also known as hardware disease or TRP. It's very common disease that we see in our clinics and probably all over India. And this is another picture. Now this is penetrated into the heart, the same needle. And this needle, because it is coming from the rumen reticulum, it has passed through the digestive tract. So the heart cavity or the peritoneal cavity or the pleural sac, they are sterile sacs. So once this needle, which is full of bacteria and pathogens that enters there, that will cause a lot of havoc, lot of abscess formation, pus formation, and ultimately heart failure, congestive heart failure. This is a lead intoxication. So you can see those silver gray colored metallic particles which are present at the base of these reticular folds. This is the right displacement of the abomasum, and when you open that, there is a congestion and hemorrhage because it's so severe. Look at the color I showed you earlier. This is now too dark and black on the serosal surface. Sometimes you find DIC, when we talk about DIC, particularly when we have gram-negative organisms, there is a severe thrombocytopenia, and there is also consumption. There are recurrent hemorrhages, and in sepsis, what will happen? Those hemorrhages will consume the platelets to clog those or block those, and then there is a consumption coagulopathy, and thus there will be thrombocytopenia purpurea or DIC, diffuse intravascular coagulation, that will lead to multiple hemorrhages because there are no more platelets to clog or block those small spots, and this will be throughout the body, and this is a very bad prognostic sign. If you have a severe thrombocytopenia in bovines, that indicates a worsening prognosis and setting up of DIC. And this is a perforated abomasal ulcer. Abomasal ulcers can be there due to multiple factors. It can be due to stress. It can be due to thalaria. It can be with other diseases, and slowly what happens, these ulcers initially they are type 1 or they are just in the superficial mucosa, and with the passage of time, once the ulcer is there, there is a fungal, we had seen that pathogenesis, there is a fungal infection, and that makes it deeper, and so a grade 1 ulcer becomes grade 2, grade 3, or even perforated grade 4, totally perforating, and this will lead to leakage of the the abomasal content, GIT content into the peritoneum, and thus there will be setting up of a severe peritonitis. I told you it's a sterile cavity, so it's highly rich in blood vessels, very active, and mesentery has been now classified as a separate organ, as you know. So once these contents enter there, there will be a very massive reaction. Alternative route to intravenous, as you know, is intraperitoneal. So this is a proliferative abomasitis as a result of Ostratagia species. When you magnify the same thing, you find these nodular, multinodular foci, variable sized multinodular foci. And see, whenever there is a obstruction, supposing there is a obstruction, the part that is proximal to that gets markedly distended because of the gas as well as content. So once content is filling that up and this mucosa gets reddened too, which indicates inflammation as well as vascular collapse. See, diarrhea is one of the commonest causes of calf mortality, particularly when you deprive the male calves or other calves. Nowadays, the farmers don't bring up the even female calves into the adulthood because it's expensive. They want to buy an adult cow instead or an adult buffalo instead. So what happens when you deprive them? You malnutrition is there. There is deprivation of colostrum. What will happen? There will be a severe diarrhea, and this is one of the commonest causes of calf mortality. And see, there is a diarrhea, and it's dehydrated, and it's also dull and depressed, this calf. And this is a cryptosporidial diarrhea, which is mucus filled, and there is also tinge of blood there, and you can see the carcass. Even in a dead animal, this will be spoiled on the back, or tail will be spoiled, indicating diarrhea. And these are the cryptosporidia which have been stained with the modified Ziehl-Neelsen. Now, if you look at the mucosa of the intestine, it should be velvety and glistening. But here it is becoming dull, and there is a lot of exudate, and you can see there are small erosions which are indicating, and there may be some entangling of the food material. So that all indicates that this is a enteritis. And this is a serosal view of the hemorrhagic enteritis. Can you see the sero? Have you seen the cocci in poultry, the Zika, and same color is there. This is a fibrinonecrotic enteritis which is caused by Clostridium perfringens. And can you see that the fibrin is forming a sort of a mold of the intestine? Sometimes the farmer will say that it is defecating the intestine. It's not intestine, it's rather replica of the intestine because of the fibrin. And this is a Clostridium perfringens type A. It's a gas-filled severe enteritis. There is a congestion. And here, this is type C, which is more hemorrhagic and more congestion. And this is Clostridium perfringens induced erosions and thickening of the abomasum. So this is a clostridial abomasitis. Can you see it's thickened, and again the mucosa is not shiny, is not glistening, is not having that typical smooth appearance. It's dull and full of exudate and also thickened edematous. This is enteric colibacillosis. When you see colibacillosis, the intestines are sort of collapsed, and this is seen around 2 weeks of age in the bovine calves. And this is a very common presentation. And this is salmonellosis. And in the salmonellosis in the intestine, there will be necrosis, as well as over that necrotic area, there will be hemorrhages because of necrosis, underlying hemorrhage is there. So there is an exudate and there is a hemorrhage, and here there is more exudate and necrotic foci. See, this E. coli is a superficial pathogen, whereas Salmonella is a deeper pathogen. It will cause more deeper necrosis, leading to hemorrhage and more damage of the intestine. This is a chronic button ulcer. This kind of ulcers are seen in swine fever too. So this is a chronic salmonella infection which happens in humans too, and you can see there are typical button ulcers. These button ulcers represent the central necrosis and peripheral proliferation. This is a rotavirus enteritis. Again, the rotaviruses, they are seen usually around the second week of life. And this is one of the commonest causes of diarrhea across species. So here you can see the cecum. Cecum is a blind end. The ileum, they are markedly distended due to accumulation of a watery diarrhea content. Otherwise, you see the serosa is rather less markedly affected. This is a very typical presentation. This is what you see in Johne's disease or paratuberculosis in the cattle. And remember, if you see a few animals, they are suffering from JD in a particular herd or farm, don't think that it is limited to those animals. Disease might be already in the incubation. It has got a long incubation period, which is somewhere between 6 months to 2 years. And the animals some may be shedding organisms, others may not be shedding organisms, and disease may be just spreading there. And look, this is highly thickened. And in these animals, because it's a chronic wasting disease, there is a frequent diarrhea. So what happens? There is a malabsorption as well. There is a hyperproteinemia. There is a emaciation and cachexia. The animal is hide bound. See, the ribs are visible. And this is over time, and it's a slow killer. And now, it is also regarded as of zoonotic importance, particularly in causing the Crohn's disease in humans. These in the JD, the lymph nodes also get involved. If an adult animal, naturally the incubation is too much, so usually the full-fledged disease is seen in the adult animals. So you will find enlargement of the mesenteric lymph nodes. See what happens in a young animal, growing animal, you can see the mesenteric lymph nodes. But in a adult animal, bovine, you can't see. Lymph nodes are already regressed. You can't see them. If you see them, that means there is some problem. And one of the commonest causes would be JD, where you would see those enlarged lymph nodes. And this is thickened and edematous ileum distended lymphatics. See, the lymphatics are distended. So markedly distended, and the ileum is edematous and thickened. And ultimately this gives rise to, because of the granulomatous inflammation there, it is particularly affecting the ileocecal area. And what will happen? There will be a marked thickening of the intestine, leading to formation of corrugations which mimic the brain. Sometimes what happens when the food material gets entangled due to aspiration or due to some other reason, or some irritant object is going into the larynx or trachea, it is causing a very severe inflammation, because this material is not meant to go into a fragile tract of the respiratory system. It is bound to go, it is destined to go into the digestive system, which is a much hardier system. This is now aspiration. See, the aspiration of contents, ruminal contents, particularly when the animals are having tympany or bloat or diaphragmatic hernia, or they are given anesthesia, the reflexes are slowed down, and what will happen? The aspiration of the GIT contents, and this more often happens in the ruminants, particularly in the bovines. So what will happen? They can physically occlude your respiratory pathways like bronchi or bronchioles, and they can kill the animal very quickly. Or if they stay on, this is a very hard material. Again, this tract is sterile. The lower respiratory tract is presumably sterile. So what will happen when this material full of all bacteria, fungi enters? It causes a massive aspiration reaction or aspiration pneumonia and killing of the animal over days. Hemorrhagic septicemia is a very important disease that you often see in Indian context. And this disease occurs usually in the hot and humid rainy season when there is a history of rain. And the disease is caused by Pasteurella multocida, and buffaloes are almost doubly, triply susceptible than the cattle. And the most important age group is between a few months to say about an year. Those are the ages when they are maximum affected, but can affect any age. Now, the sporadic form of disease is also seen in the winter climate or hilly areas. So you can see there is edema of the neck as well as the brisket edema is there. There is a brisket edema and pneumonia of the cranioventral lobes, because the infection is through aerosol, so it is going to fall into those lobes which are the nearest to the trachea, as well as which are more dependent on gravity. We call those as cranioventral or anterior ventral lobes, and those are the apical cardiac or the accessory lobes. And now this on gross appearance will show you a marbled appearance, means the interlobular septa, they are markedly dilated, the pleura is dilated, and you can see a typical marbled appearance. This kind of appearance can also be seen in contagious bovine pleuropneumonia. And as the name indicates, the hemorrhagic septicemia, so you can see hemorrhages everywhere in the body, all over the serosal and mucosal surfaces. This is the serosal surface where you can see pinpoint foci of hemorrhages. And you can see those hemorrhages on the heart, you can see those hemorrhages on the lungs. I told you that you can see them anywhere. And sometimes in HS there is a associated hemorrhagic enteritis as well. And in chronic cases there can be a necrotic patch on the liver. And these are the petechial hemorrhages on the brain. You can see the hemorrhages in the brain also. There are some petechial and even larger foci of hemorrhages. In more protracted cases, usually the death is very quick, within hours or per acute or maybe a few days. But the cases that linger on, they will develop a full-fledged fibrinopurulent bronchopneumonia or pleuropneumonia. And again, the cranioventral lobes will be affected. See, the lobes that are affected, they are depressed below the normal. Rest of that is emphysematous. Why? Because this is full of exudate which causes associated atelectasis. And you can see the dilatation of the interlobular septa because of the dilatation of the lymphatics, because of accumulation of edematous fluid, pus, as well as fibrin. So later on there can be development of abscesses. If the disease stays, then there can be a very severe pleuropneumonia or pleuritis with a lot of adhesions between the parietal and the visceral pleura, as well as the development of abscesses. So this picture clearly shows that pneumonia, and can you see the interlobular septa are dilated. And see, this color is also grayish. This is more pinkish. So that grayish picture, and if you take a part of this, this has less air, more exudate, it's heavier, it's more denser. When you put it in water, it is going to sink. That's another view. This is a more protracted case, and can you see a lot of fibrin now coming up on the pleural surface, and pneumonia has advanced. And this is a microscopic view, just by the way I put it, to show you the microscopic correlation of the cross. So can you see there is a marked dilatation of the interlobular septa as well as the pleura. There is a severe congestion and hemorrhage, and there is a lot of exudate which is blocking the alveoli. There are only few alveoli which are open now. Rest of them have been occluded by exudate. Now let us talk about tuberculosis. So here you can see the lungs, they show the typical cheesy nodules or cheesy masses within them. There are multifocal granulomatous areas which are variably contured. Their contours are not clear. And this is the lymph node, usually the mediastinal lymph node. Sometimes what happens, you may not see much of the nodules in the lung, but the lymph node is radically enlarged and contains a cheesy exudate, and then probably you can suspect tuberculosis. This is another presentation, smaller nodules, more calcified. The healing nodules or the older nodules, they may get calcified. So calcification would also be important in determining the age of the tuberculous nodules. It also tells you about if there is a single nodule which is calcified, probably that's a healed focus. But if there are many of them, probably that's an older disease. So again, you can see there are a lot of variations. There is a calcification, there is a caseation, there is a hemorrhage, etc. And sometimes the lungs are really big and emphysematous, and when you cut, you find this exudate flowing out, and there are several small nodules. This is another presentation, and this is the lymph node, kind of lymph node you see, the multifocal granulomatous areas there. TB nodules can be seen not only in the lungs in bovines, they can be seen elsewhere. For example, here you can see in the diaphragm, you can see in the liver, you can see in the spleen. But this is rare. And brain tuberculosis also can be there, although in bovines this is less, and usually we see that in younger calves. And we had seen 2 cases of the tuberculosis. And this is another pulmonary hydatidosis or echinococosis, which is very prominent one. And this is a very common disease where particularly the multi-species dogs are kept with the bovines, because the adult worms, they are seen in the dogs. So what happens then, there will be a lot of cases of this. Is very common, and many a times this is incidental finding. But what happens, sometimes these hydrated cysts, they are too many, and they certainly do compression of the adjoining parenchyma of the lung, as well as they may rupture, leading to shock or death. They can be seen in other organs as well. This is a foot rot. Recently, somebody asked me, showed such kind of picture to me of the calves and asked me what it could be. And this kind of thing can be foot rot, particularly when the animals are on kacha floor and it is wet and full of moisture, and then this bacteria that proliferates. This is a Moraxella bovis, which is causing a pink eye, or we call it as infectious bovine keratoconjunctivitis. Pyelonephritis can be another thing which can be seen, although it's not that common in bovines as in dogs, but can be seen in bovines along with bacterial cystitis. And pyelonephritis, most of the times, is an ascending infection from the bladder. And you see there are cystic cavities which are full of pus, and they are compressing the adjoining parenchyma. There is a lot of necrosis and damage to the kidney, and ultimately the kidneys are going to fail. And this may be also associated with sepsis or septicemias. These are the cases of, this is another very common presentation, the peritoneal cavity lesions. Peritonitis is a very common presentation in the bovines. This can be due to many reasons. This can be due to TRP. This can be due to the leakage of gut contents. This can be due to dystochias. This can be due to a lot of manipulation. This can be man-made due to surgeries. This can be due to many reasons. So rupture of uterus, rupture of intestine. So you can see this peritonitis, very severe peritonitis. So there are a lot of adhesions between the various surfaces of the serosal membranes, omentum, the mesothelium, the mesothelial lining of the serosa, as well as the different organs. Even the liver and other abdominal organs may be progressively involved from periphery to the center, and this can cause liver abscesses and even the cirrhosis of the liver. Epicardial hemorrhages is a very common epicardial endocardial hemorrhages. They are non-specific conditions which you can see associated, and we call it as septicemia, toxemia, hypoxia. All those things can cause epicardial and subendocardial hemorrhages. This is fibrinous pericarditis. See, the pericardial sac is full of fibrin, and most commonly it is due to TRP or due to hardware disease, but can also be with a systemic disease. For example, in HS, there can be fibrinous pericarditis, rarely though. Kidney infarcts can also be seen. Infarcts in kidney in the ruminants are rather less common, but you can see there are different presentations and they are usually wedge shaped. When you cut it, they will be wedge shaped because they represent the blood supply route. And these infarcts may be due to Corynebacterium, for example. Similarly, there can be a white spotted kidney. There can be white spots on the kidney which or milk spots on the kidney which is associated with the bovine leptospirosis. That's also bovine uh, white spotted kidney. There can also be liver abscesses which can come with a systemic disease. Let us say mastitis can cause liver abscesses. And I told you the peritonitis even can result in liver abscesses. Now, there can also be fatty liver disease, which is seen particularly in pregnant animals. The contours are rounded, the liver is big and pale in appearance and is greasy on the surface. You can also get the nutmeg liver disease, what you call as chronic venous congestion. That chronic venous congestion of the sinusoids causes atrophy of the hepatic cords. That's why these sinusoids appear dilated. And those white areas represent the hepatic cells, and the red areas represent the sinusoids. So they are markedly dilated and alternating bands of those that makes the nutmeg liver. This is the cirrhosis of the liver, kind of cirrhosis. The liver is smaller and there are multiple nodules. So this is also quite common as a result of CVC. I've seen early cirrhosis in many cases of peritonitis. These are the other abscesses which you can see, and there is a pus oozing out. You can see out of that, and they may be associated with or without mastitis. And this is a typical mastitis, severe mastitis. See the color change. This udder component or this quarter is markedly enlarged and congested and will be hot in the live animal to feel and will be painful, and this is what is the hallmarks of mastitis. But this is since a gross lesion, this is in the dead animal, you can see still the remnants of that congestion are there and the enlargement is there, swelling is there. Cystitis is another thing that you see several times in the bovine urinary bladder, and the urinary bladder is thickened. The one of the key signs is thickened, and you can see the smooth appearance is gone and it's rather a rough appearance, and you can see there is also congestion which represents inflammation. And now we come over to another very important disease, which is FMD. FMD affects more often the cows than buffaloes. Buffaloes, the FMD is not that serious, but in cows it may be serious. So here you can see there is a drooling of thick saliva, and sometimes it's blood mixed. And there are ulcers on the tongue. Because of that ulcers in the tongue, there are erosions in the oral cavity all through. What happens? That will cause a lot of irritation when the animal is feeding, and that will produce excessive saliva as a result, and which will drool. And there is a change in the degglutination as well. Swallowing reflex is affected, and naturally there is a drooling. And these are the foot lesions, as the name is, foot and mouth disease. Sometimes we try to see those lesions in the oral cavity, but we forget about and the animal is showing lameness, and these lesions are difficult to, they take much longer to heal, because it's very difficult to medicate those areas and require a long term, and they may become deep seated lesions. In the younger group of animals, say up to 1 year of age or maximum 2 years of age in the bovines, you find the tigroid appearance of the heart. There are necrotic linear foci in the heart which give a tiger stripping or tigroid heart appearance. And these are the necrotic areas infiltrated by mononuclear cells, particularly the lymphoid cells. And this kind of appearance is also seen to some extent in the parvovirus in the canine. And teeth lesions are rare in FMD in cattle, but still sometimes you can see the vesicles and erosions. There can be erosions in the oral cavity elsewhere, in the gums, in the palate, in the tongue. I have already shown you, and usually these are more on the dorsal surface of the tongue. And here you can see the erosions in the ruminal mucosa, which are rare and we generally ignore them, we don't see them. You have to wash and see the ruminal mucosa, and they represent the FMD. And this is now the brucellosis. Brucellosis is another very important disease, which is the most important one in Indian context, and a lot of hue and cry and a lot of government planning and funds into it. And here you can see there is a necrosis of the cotyledons, and there is a thickened and leathery appearance of this. That's why we call it as leathery placenta. And you can see there is a congestion, hemorrhage over the cotyledons, there is edema, there is also necrotic, and there is exudation as well. And interestingly, the fetus will show a marked edema when you have the aborted fetus, which is usually in the third trimester, and then you will see this uh, edematous carcass with serosanguinous fluid in all the body cavities. Pneumonia in the fetal lung is collapsed always. So this is collapsed, that's why interlobular septa are well visible, and you see there will be pneumonia developing here in the fetal lung and necrotic foci on the liver. That's pathognomonic, or that's important in this, as well as the leathery placenta. So when you have to test a abortion, you have to look at the mother, you have to look at the fetus, you have to look at the placenta. All three things are important. In the males, there is a testis is enlarged, there is orchitis, and this is cut part of that. Sometimes the hygromas in the chronic cases, you see that hygroma development in the joints in the brucellosis. Infectious bovine rhinotracheitis, which is caused by bovine herpes virus 1, and you can see conjunctivitis there, eye congestion, and conjunctivitis. There is a ocular and nasal discharge. There is a nasal discharge. There is a ocular discharge. There is a multifocal white opaque foci, plaques or foci, which are seen on the palpebraal conjunctiva. This is a magnified view. And in the trachea, there can be different kind of lesions. There can be simply congestion or hemorrhage. There can be necrosis with exudate coming up, and sometimes very severe like this. A lot of fibrin there. And sometimes we think it is aspiration, but then you have to rule out by looking at the microscopy and looking at the lungs, cutting all the bronchi and bronchioles, looking for, and the history as well. All those things are very important. Lesions, if you look at the serology, serological surveys would reveal that IBR incidence is very high, but clinical picture would show that there are very full-fledged or clinical cases. And we have seen that in buffaloes too. And IBR can also affect the vulva, the vagina, and the glans penis. It can affect the vulva, the vagina, and the glans penis, and can lead to abortions. And again, the liver is swollen. Thalaria. Thalaria, you can see one of the lesions which you can't see in Babesia and Anaplasma is conjunctivitis. That you see usually in the thalaria. Lymph node enlargement is radically more characteristic or pathognomonic of thalaria. And you can see this is a markedly enlarged lymph node. Prescapular lymph nodes being closest when the tick is infecting near the ears or the head region, the hidden parts, then the nearest lymph node would be this one and it would be affected. Later on, the mesenteric lymph nodes may also, and there are those punched out ulcers in the abomasum which are more pathognomonic. But along with that, if you have the lymph node enlargement, and high fever history in the live animal and the history of ticks, then it is a sure shot diagnosis for thalaria. Another thing is because the thalaria causes lymphoproliferation, selective B cell proliferation. So what happens is those cells infiltrate into the interstitium of the lung, and there is a interstitial pneumonia as well as. And this is babesiosis. How to differentiate when you open the bladder and when you take that urine that is red water or red colored. This is also called, along with other diseases, red water disease. And that hemoglobin, being water soluble, will be absorbed by the tubules and the kidney goes red. And this also causes, hemoglobin is toxic to the kidney and it causes hemoglobinuric nephrosis or kidney failure. And the carcass is markedly anemic because of the, mostly it is intravascular hemolysis, and the spleen is readily enlarged. Why? Because this hemoglobin has to be taken care of or disposed of by the spleen mainly, and in that attempt the spleen goes multiple times enlarged. And this is anaplasmosis. Differentiating feature, there can be respiratory distress because of the severe anemia. Anaplasmosis, the anemia is markedly severe. And usually anaplasma affects the older group of animals than the younger group of animals. And there is a constipation as well. There can be hemorrhages over the epicardium. And one key lesion would be thickening of the gallbladder or gall sickness that you see here. And this is also anaplasma. Anaplasma causes a lot of jaundice as well. So all those areas which have fat, they will pick up those bilirubin and you will find yellowish discoloration of fluids, yellowish discoloration of plasma, yellowish discoloration of the fat. Fasciola is another disease which is in Indian context. It's gigantica, which is the magna is the largest. And again, there is a edema, submandibular edema there is there. Or biscuit may also be, because this also represents just a hyperproteinemia because of the liver damage. There is a change in the blood composition, and that's why there is a this fluid accumulating or the serous effusion. And you can see the flukes that have come out after opening their magnified views, and you can see the liver is affected in multiple areas. And bile ducts, because the flukes live in the bile ducts, slowly they cause hyperplasia and thickening of the bile duct epithelium, and they become stem pipe-like or very much thickened, very prominent bile ducts. It sometimes feels it is a tumor. Joint ill or omphalitis is another very important disease and is caused by multiplicity of organisms, and it is because of asepsis when you're cutting those uh, the navel. And once you are not doing those septic or aseptic precautions, you are introducing an infection, and there may be a localized abscess. Sometimes it percolates into a complete peritonitis and may be a killer because of this, leading to sepsis. Swelling of the joints can also be there. The inflammation or the organisms, once they become going into the system, then they are entering into the joint cavities and localized there. You know, the salmonella and E. coli can, particularly the salmonella, can localize into these joint cavities. And then that E. coli will cause a lot of painful walking and all that. We call it as joint ill, that's why. And there will be, you see, these joints are not normal. They are eroded, and there is a pus coming out of these joints, and they are reddish too, and that indicates this. And when you see that a large number of animals have died, whenever you see there is a huge mortality all of a sudden, suspect a poisoning, suspect clostridial disease. But in clostridial disease, remember, the healthiest and the young animals which have heavy muscle mass, they are more affected than the ones which are not that, which are weak or which are older, they are not that affected. The healthiest of animals, without giving warning signs, they will die all of a sudden. But this is basically electric shock. There was an electric wire there which had fallen there, and this is electric shock which will cause hemolysis and anterior part of the aorta that will be reddened in these cases. This is a final slide which I wanted to share. When you take from a dead animal, even the blood on a blotting paper, if you see this chocolate color, this is nitrate, nitrite, which is one of the commonest poisonings when you give a lot of urea along with the rainy season, and then that gets into the stem and leaves of the plants, and once the animals are fed that, there is a nitrate, nitrite poisoning. Look at the change in the color. This cannot be seen that clearly when the blood is in the tube, but once you put it on a blotting paper, this becomes rather a very easy test. And finally, I basically proposed a webinar on neutrophils, but the organizers, they were in favor of the gross lesions. So this is my favorite topic, this neutrophils, and see, they look fascinating here. Thank you very much for all this. And I'm thankful to not only the organizers, I am equally thankful to all the audiences here who have made the day.
Thank you, Professor Sood sir, for a wonderful, nice presentation. You have given an elaborative and very scientific description of the various affections and the lesions particularly of the various systems, as well as the covering the various bacterial viral diseases also. So I think it will be very useful for the field veterinarians, academicians, scientists, and researchers also. So thank you very much, Professor Sood sir, for your wonderful presentation. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Kishore, and all my friends, and I wish you good evening and happy life in the future. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, sir.